Have you ever had something stolen from you? It's an awful feeling to have a possession stolen, only to wonder where it went. Some victims of theft receive their stolen goods back after some time, which is always described as bittersweet. It's sweet to have it back in your possession, but bitter to know it was in a stranger's possession for some time. Nevertheless, having it back, you clean it up and protect it from being stolen again. This message is about a possession that was stolen and later returned to its rightful owner many years later. Thanks for listening to today's message. I feel compelled to do this message in light of recent historical events. The 8th commandment says that you shall not steal. Everyone can agree that stealing is wrong, especially those who have had something stolen from them. I'm going to tell you a true story about a family farm that was stolen by a greedy king, and many years later it was returned to the family ancestors. Many, many years ago there was a small family that settled on a useless plot of land. They worked the barren, rocky soil and produced fruitful crops after much sweat and toil. They took a land that was seen by all as useless, rocky, infertile soil, and to everyone's surprise, turned it into a beautiful, fruitful farmland, harvesting large, bountiful crops. Over the years, the Jacob family grew and prospered. They built little homes scattered around the farmland and also harvested fruitful crops on their section of land that belonged to their family. The family farm grew and prospered for many generations until an evil king from the west came to their land, plundering and burning down the barns, and stole the land for himself. The evil king killed most of the Jacob family and decided to rename the family farmland to wipe out all memory of the family name. But as I said before, the evil king killed most, but not all of the family. In the far reaches of the land there dwelt a few family members who were scattered here and there. They grew and multiplied and kept working their section of land for many more generations. They never used the new name the evil king gave the land and always told the story of how the evil king stole the land and renamed it. Then, years later, a new king who was not evil heard of the story of the Jacob family farm and how they were unjustly treated and how it was all stolen from them. This good king went to the land and met the ancestors of the original family that were still on the land. He decided to give back the land and allow it to be officially recognized as the original name of the Jacob family farm. And the Jacob family grew once again and prospered. Unfortunately, the neighbors became jealous and were filled with hate for this noble action that the good king bestowed on the Jacob family. The neighbors refused to use the Jacob's name and kept referring it to the land as the name the evil king called it. The neighbors made up lies and said the Jacob family stole the land from them and to this very day have fought and made war with the Jacob family, not allowing them to ever rest because of their hatred for them. By now, most of you know what this true story is all about. It is about the Jacob family indeed, otherwise known as Israel and the land of Israel. It was a barren, rocky land that was seen as useless land thousands of years ago when the 12 tribes settled in the land. They did work the rocky, weedy soil with much sweat and toil and produce fruitful crops, all with the help from the living God who gave them the land. They were blessed by God and protected as long as they followed His commandments and served Him only. They grew and multiplied and through the generations had many ups and many downs in which they would turn away from God and follow man-made commandments and man-made gods, only to be brought to a place of great regret and sorrow, which led them back to serving the true living God. This up and down pattern continued until the ultimate down, in which most of Israel rejected their Savior and foretold Messiah. He came into Jerusalem riding on a donkey on the exact day foretold by Daniel the prophet. It was 173,880 days, from March 14th, 445 BC until April the 6th, 32 AD, or the 10th of Nisan, the day which the families would choose a lamb for the upcoming Passover. This was the exact day that Jesus, who is the Lamb of God, entered the city as the Messiah. The reason I'm so specific about this day and why they should have been expecting him is because it is highlighted in such a way by Jesus himself in Luke 19, verses 41 to 44. As Jesus approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it and said, "If you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace. But now it is hidden from your eyes. The days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment against you and encircle you and hem you in on every side. They will dash you to the ground, you and the children within your walls. They will not leave one stone on another, because you did not recognize the time of God's coming to you." So Jesus literally cried over the Jewish leaders' rejection of him and let them know that from now on all these things will be hidden from them, and that the city would be destroyed and all the great stones being thrown down and taken apart. All of this happened just as Jesus said it would, and so, in just under 40 years from that day, the temple and the city of Jerusalem was destroyed by Titus in 70 AD. The land was still called Israel and fully occupied by the Jews for another couple of generations until the year 135, when Rome put down the Second Jewish Uprising and decided to erase all memory of Israel by renaming the land after their enemies, who were the Philistines, and called the land Palestine. They did this to basically punish them and erase all memory of Israel. And it remained this name for over 1,800 years, till May 14th, 1948, when the international community decided to officially rename the land back to its original name of Israel. For over 1,800 years, there were always some pockets of Jews who lived in the land, but these were small populations, with most of the Jewish people moving to other parts of the world like Russia and Europe. In the early 1900s, all the way up until 1948, there were many Jewish families coming back to the land and buying empty fields of rocky, barren, useless land from the Arabs, who laughed at them and thought they were crazy. There are pictures of Jewish families standing on barren wasteland in places like Tel Aviv that are now large cities. In the late 19th century, Mark Twain visited the land of Israel and called it a desolate country full of weeds in a mournful expanse of no living thing. He never saw a human being anywhere in the land when he went there in 1867. But just 100 years from then would see a once dead land be made alive again. There are some who say that the Jews stole the land and tell all kinds of lies about the Jewish people, but that is easily disproved by history if anyone cares to look into it. The few Jews who remained have grown into millions of Jews, and the few Arabs who also live there have grown into the millions as well. Arabs and Jews have lived alongside each other all along. Some Arabs even work with and are friends with the Jews in the land. There are lots and lots of Arabs living in Israeli territory, but there are no Jews living in Gaza. None. Jews have tried all along to have peace with the Arabs. The Jews have offered many peace plans over the years, but the Arabs always refuse anything that involves the Jews having their own land. As the now famous chant goes, "From the river to the sea," that means they want it all, without the Jews in the land. Jews even allowed the Arabs to work in their homes and on their land as laborers all the way up until October the 7th, 2023, when over 1,200 Jewish men, women, children, and even babies were brutally murdered in the most barbaric way, and even hundreds were taken hostage, all because they were Jews. These monsters gleefully live-streamed themselves conducting these evil acts of rape, torture, and murder for the whole world to witness, while they screamed, "God is great" in Arabic. And now some people want to forget that day and pretend that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, while they go after the terrorists who hide amongst civilians under the ground through the tunnels of miles and miles of tunnels. Again, they have offered a peace plan that would end the war, which includes laying down their weapons and returning the hostages that are still alive. But they will not comply and would rather have innocent people suffer and be killed for their deep-rooted hatred. People that love and support the Jews having their own land back are called Zionists. Up until very recent history, it was not a bad thing to be identified as a Zionist, but that is not the case anymore. There is a fast-growing anti-Zionist movement with its roots in Islam and anti-Semitic groups who are spreading more lies about the Jewish people and those who support them. There are even some so-called Christians who have joined forces with these anti-Semitic groups who hate the Jewish people. They have resurrected the image of Adolf Hitler as a good man who got a bad rap, and they say he was doing the world a favor. I never thought I would see the day when people who call themselves Christians would be joining forces with hate-filled, suicidal jihadist Muslims and Adolf Hitler and hating the Jewish people. After all, Jesus himself, who is a Jew, said not to hate anyone, even our enemies. So if Jesus says not to hate, but to love our enemies, what are these so-called Christians doing, partnering with such hate-filled groups of people? It's time for me to wrap up this message, and so I will summarize by saying that the Jewish people did not steal their land in 1948, but it was returned back to them. The land was a desolate wasteland with hardly any human beings there, and they have made it flourish once again with God's blessing. 99% of the Jewish people are good, peaceful, nonviolent, non-aggressive, kind, and loving, while 99% of their enemies are violent, radical, aggressive, hate-filled liars who would rather die for their hate of the Jews than live in peace with them. And that's the truth. Jesus said he would return at the end of this age, and it is safe to say that this age is coming to an end very quickly. Before Jesus comes back, he will open the eyes of the Jewish people, and they will finally say, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Until then, we need to pray for all those who are lost and without Christ, even the Jewish people. One of the most amazing things I have witnessed is when a Jew finally picks up the Gospel of Matthew and starts to read it. Almost instantly, their eyes are open to the truth about their Messiah, and they become a complete Jew when they receive the God who saves, also known as Yeshua.